the two women could be done.
I thought both of them would be here. Just Callie was not coming.
Kathy was the only one who wasn't gonna be here.
It's been a bit chaotic.
I guess she's got a few minutes.
Lake temperature yesterday because I was going to move the boat place. I looked at it. I was like, 1 more degree and I can go out there without a wetsuit.
I'm glad I can provide a public service.
It's like it's 59 degrees, officially 60. It's like 55
You have an
is-
upper limit, huh?
I was like 55, I'll go in, but I think this year I'll wait till 60.
Fair enough. I'm with you.
I can remember in high school, some friends that lived on the lake. One of them, he'd take off the dock in his regular school clothes and just ski and
Come back.
come back and
I did 1 year. We got out and the water was just, it was so bad. I don't even know how cold it was, but I was curled in a ball and shivering. Getting ready to tell my dad to go. He answered a call from my mom. I'm sitting here like 3 weeks before Memorial Weekend. And my cousin, her wife's cousin's in the back. Like, Jerry, you need to get off the phone. Brian's making some hand gestures too. You should probably get off.
Shiny,
Probably
but I
get
don't
off the
get
phone.
rid of inside. This doesn't even look like my dog.
But she,
What?
You're not late. You
that's
got 1 more minute.
okay. I think I just turned myself. There, you can have this.
We're good.
worked at Van Buren Park as a ranger. Well, every year we had to put the dock out in the swimming zone, diving dock.
Oh, man.
And we had to go through our life-saving, because even though we were working up at the part of the park, if they had a lifeguard that was short or whatever, we had to go down and help cover if there was a problem. So we had to go through the life-saving techniques. And we, yeah, because we opened Memorial Weekend, so this was like 2 weeks or 3 weeks before. It was cold.
Yes, let's go ahead and. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to the Charter Township of Van Buren Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, May 11th, 2022. Have a roll call, please.
Brian Cullen,
Here.
Hutchinson. Kelly Barr is excused. Kamika Garrett. Sherry Budd.
Here,
Jeff Jar.
Here.
Brian Kelly.
Here. We have an agenda before us this evening. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Cullen. Any comments or discussion on the motion? Seeing as none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the agenda is approved. We have next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of April 27th, 2022. A motion to approve the minutes.
Move to approach, approve the minutes of the meeting of April 27th, 2022.
Support?
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Cullen, support by Commissioner Jar. Any comments or discussion regarding the minutes? Seeing as we have no comments or discussion, all in favor to approve the minutes, say aye.
aye.
Opposed? And the motion passes. We are up to our first major item on the agenda, which is a public hearing. We have case number 22003, Ashley Crossroads Distribution Center North LLC rezoning petition. We have a request by Crossroads Distribution Center North LLC to rezone the properties detailed on the agenda. And can I get a motion to approve the public hearing?
Through the chair, I make a motion to open the public hearing.
You got support for the motion to open the public hearing?
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Budd, support by Commissioner Jar. We have a roll call for the public hearing motion, please.
Brian Cullen.
Yes.
Hutchinson.
Yes.
Sherry Budd.
Yes.
Jeff Jar.
Yes.
Brian Kelly.
Yes. So we have an approval to open the public hearing on the request for rezoning. So for the public hearing at this time, do we have anybody that would like to speak to this agenda item on the public hearing? I believe there were notices sent out for quite a few parcels on this, this agenda item. Is that correct, Director Powers?
Yep, that's correct. All property owners within 300 feet of the boundaries of the parcels that are on the request.
All right, thank you. Seeing there's nobody that wants to speak in the public hearing, do we have anybody on Zoom that wants to speak to this agenda item? Or Director Power?
Question, Mr. Chair. We have 4 people participating remotely tonight. I don't see any of them with their hands raised for public comment.
All right, thank you. Last call for any comments on this agenda item. All right, so we have a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner Jar, support by
Support.
Commissioner Budd. All those in favor to close the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion to close public hearing has passed. All right, we are up to new business. Item number 1, case 22-003, Ashley Crossroads Distribution Center North, rezoning petition. We have a presentation by township staff and consultants on this agenda item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our image of the rezoned, the parcels under consideration for rezoning. I'm going to just defer my comments to the principal planner, our planning consultant with McKenna, Vidya Krishnan, to go over the findings in her report. And we do have Kyle Morton, Joe Webb, and Dennis Schultz representing the applicant tonight in the audience, so they can speak to the request as well. With that, I'll defer this to Ms. Krishnan.
Thank you, Director Power. As you had mentioned previously, Chairman, the proposal from Ashley Crossroads is to rezone multiple parcels that total about 29 acres from R1B, single-family residential, to M1, which is light industrial district. These parcels are located in an approximate area that is boxed in by Van Born and Ecos roads, immediately west of Haggerty Road. With regard to the existing uses of land, these assorted parcels are bound by industrial use parcels to the north, south, and some to the east. There is also some single-family residential to the east that fronts on Haggerty, and to the west we have the ITC corridor. The current zoning designation of these parcels ranges anywhere from R1B to partial M1 to M1 and C1. There is just assorted variety of zoning on it. And the future land use plan for this area mostly designates it as light industrial, heavy industrial, office light industrial, and to the west, it calls it out as multiple family residential, which is the ITC corridor. In your letter is a map, which Director Power has so nicely put up over there, which actually shows you all the parcels that are under consideration at this time to be rezoned from R1 to R1B to M1. Now, there are specific standards in the zoning ordinance based upon which the board considers every request for rezoning. I shall summarize those. The first one is consistency with the master plan. The Michigan Zoning Enabling Act requires that a zoning ordinance be based on the master plan, and which was recently adopted actually as late as 2020, and it also includes the previous iterations of the plans, which is in 1999 we had adopted a single-family residential plan, 2000 we had adopted the Ecos Haggerty Road Corridor Plan, 2001 was the Grace Lake Area Plan, 2007 was the Southside Master Plan, and finally the Belleville Road District Plan in 2010. So these are all assorted components that together, along with the updated master plan, make up the sum total of the vision for the township's future. The applicant's proposal to rezone the parcel and to develop it for distribution center, light industrial uses. As you can see, the main chunk of Ashley's parcel is zoned MT, which is the Industrial Transportation District. The master plan designates the future land use of the subject site and the abutting parcels as light industrial. And the applicant is proposing to maintain what the master plan recommends, keeping light industrial along the street frontages and the distribution center industrial transportation to the inside of the site. Now, one of the parcels that you see, which is owned by Ashley, which is not a part of this request for rezoning, is the strangler piece of parcel. Pointing out here, it is zoned R1B, and it is actually master planned also residential. It's an unusual triangular-shaped parcel that borders the ITC corridor that is over 350 feet wide. The same situation had come up when Ashley Crossroads Buildings 5 and 6 were designed. This parcel was zoned R1B2. At the time of site plan approval, the Planning Commission restricted the use of this parcel only for detention pond and tree planting. No part of their parking or circulation drives or anything was allowed to be on this R1B zoned parcel. It is not viable as a residential parcel. It's got the ITC corridor on one side and industrial distribution on the other. It just so unusually happens to be an odd-shaped parcel that when the master plan was reviewed, it was consistently maintained as a straight line without looking whether an individual property owner owns that triangle also. It is not part of this request. However, in previous discussions with Ashley, we made them aware that in the future, when this northern portion is developed, the same kind of things will be considered for this portion, which continues to remain zoned R1B. But it is not on your table tonight. I just mentioned it so that the Planning Commission, the concern doesn't come up because you are aware of this, or if you have looked through all the assorted parcels and you're wondering what's going to happen over here. The second criteria is consistency with the basic intent and purpose of the ordinance. It is intended that the M1 district acts as a transition between heavy industrial uses and non-industrial uses. If you look on the north side of Van Born, we have some really intense heavy industrial uses, and then it borders Canton, which just has an assortment of automotive and junkyard, those kind of uses. So none of those are classified as light industrial. Having the frontage designed as M1, similar to what they have on Ecos Road, will provide for a transition from north to south. We believe at this time, this is consistent with the intent of the zoning ordinance itself. The third is the capability of the street system to safely and efficiently accommodate the expected traffic. At the time Crossroads North was approved, buildings 5 and 6 and the light industrial, the applicant had to work with Wayne County and make improvements to Ecos Road because of the extensive truck traffic and add in a turn lane along the entire length of their property. At such time, when they develop these parcels, the parcels that are closer to Van Born, a detailed traffic impact study will be required at the time, and once again, it will be subject to both the township's review and Wayne County review in order to make sure that the road network has got the ability to pick up the additional traffic that this use will generate. The proposed uses on the site at this time do not have construction of any building, and we are not aware of any constraints in the water or sewer system's capacity to serve the site. If there are any constraints, the applicant will be required to address that at the time of site plan approval. There are no errors in the zoning map which are being corrected by the proposed rezoning. This request for rezoning is not an exclusionary zoning. Exclusionary zoning basically means there is no land zoned in the township to accommodate a particular use, which means you're basically trying to exclude the use by not allowing it in any zoning district. There are other parcels also zoned M1, however, in limited scope, and there are lots of other parcels within the township that are zoned R1B, which can accommodate single-family residential uses. Currently, the majority of the site is a vacant grassy lot. According to the Eagles Wetland Map Viewer, there are few wetland areas on the site, but according to the FEMA website, there are no floodplains on the site. Having wetlands is not a disqualifier for developing the parcel. It just means that the applicant will have to mitigate the wetlands if required by Eagle. Once again, something that will be reviewed at site plan approval time. The next criteria is uses permitted in the proposed district, and we believe the M1 uses that are to be intended located along the Van Born frontage will be developed without creating negative impacts on the adjacent parcels. As I mentioned, there are still some single-family homes along the frontage on Haggerty, and there are some at the corner of Haggerty and Van Born. And at the time of site plan review, our ordinance has extensive greenbelt and planting requirements. All of those will be reviewed and implemented on these sites to ensure protection of existing single-family residential areas. The purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance in imposing regulations is to govern the location and construction of structures and buildings used for either business, industry, or residences. To that end, there are provisions for greenbelts, setbacks, and control measures which will ensure that the site does meet all of the requirements of the ordinance. Based on the location of the parcels that the applicant is asking for rezoning, predominantly abutting MT and M1, the proposed M1 zoning is the most appropriate zoning that it can be changed to, which is what the master plan recommends. Because of the specific industrial, sometimes one of the standards is, would it be more appropriate to actually create a text amendment to allow a particular use in the existing zoning district rather than rezone the parcel? We don't think allowing industrial uses in the R1B district is a good idea, so the only other option is to actually rezone it to an M1 designation. And finally, this is not going to create an isolated residential area. It is continuing the industrial uses along the chunk of land that is actually owned by the petitioner at this time. Based upon our review of the proposal and the fact that it complies with the master plan and its goals and visions, it is our recommendation that the subject sites be rezoned from R1B to M1 because it meets the following 12 standards that are mentioned in the McKenna letter dated May 6th, 2022. It's our recommendation that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the requested rezoning to the Township Board of Trustees. I would like to add a clarification that the condition that is listed over here be discounted because this is not a conditional rezoning. My intent behind adding it on the letter was to make the applicant aware that at the time of site plan review, this is something we'll be looking at. However, adding it as a condition makes it look like it's a conditional rezoning, which it is not. So kindly discount the condition from the letter, and our recommendation is for it to be sent to the Board of Trustees with the recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Krishnan.
I think Ms. Krishnan covered it well. I have no further comment, just changing to the screen view again.
Thank you so much, Director Power. All right, that brings us up to a presentation by the applicant. Somebody from the
Good evening to the board. Kyle Morton with Ashley Capital. I'm our Vice President of Development. I think that presentation was pretty thorough. I don't think we need to talk about specific parcels. I think there's a few things I wanted to cover from more of a high level and provide an update on the overall Crossroads Distribution Center North project. I think many of you are aware buildings 4 and 5 have been built. Those were finished, I guess, under the wire in December 2020, right in peak COVID time. Those are fully leased right now, and we've pulled our building permit for building number 6, which is a 660,000 foot building. So that building is hopefully going to be complete in December. That would mean that we have 3 tenants who are currently vying for the space. No leases are signed at the moment, but that would be all of the site plan approved land that we have and all the buildings that we can build. So the main request here is to start consolidating the zoning on the land. I think we're hopeful we'll get some favorable feedback. Right now we're working on getting funding lined up for the Haggerty Road reconstruction in an attempt to make sure we get that from a 2-lane road to a 3-lane, 2 lanes with a center turn lane, as well as a new traffic signal at the half-mile point, as well as working on our wetlands permit. So rather than go in circles and present plans to the board, we're going to make sure we get those buttoned up and then come in maybe early fall for site plan approval on the rest of the land. The one other minor thing, and I think we just missed this by probably 2 days, there's one additional parcel which I'll point out right there. That will be on the next Planning Commission meeting for rezoning. We unfortunately submitted and then reached an agreement with the homeowner the day that the public notice went out. So that will then give us a unified M1 zoning from a majority of the stretch between the existing church, kind of close to Van Born, down to most of the residential. Outside of that, I think any questions, but that's it from us.
All right, thank you so much. Do you have any questions or comments from anybody in the public? Brings us up to any questions or comments from any of the commissioners.
Through the chair,
Yes.
The last parcel that you are, that you came to an agreement on, was that the last residential parcel
No.
there in that area?
No, there's, through the chair, there's, see if I can move this at the same time. There's 3 houses that are on this parcel right here, and then there's several houses that are further south. So we maintain contact with those homeowners, and we'll work with them on that. Our actual vision on what will be coming forward from a site plan perspective on the next, called the next phase, will be at the half-mile point and north. So that area south that's closest to the residential wouldn't have anything at this time. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from any of the commissioners?
Mr. Chair. Are there any, I ask the applicant, are there any plans to combine the parcels in the future?
yes, the reason we haven't done that yet is we were trying to figure out exactly how to arrange it, and we didn't want to do lot consolidations and splits numerous times. So as we've seen, we keep adding. Once we think we know what we're about to do, we add another parcel on the edge or something slightly changes, or now that we have the zoning taken care of, we're working on a few of the wetlands and items to make sure we got the buildings laid out right. When we went forward with buildings 4, 5, and 6, they were originally all one parcel, and then once it was built, we split it off into 4 and 5, and now building 6 is its own parcel. So that will happen as we go, but there's still some variability in terms of how big some of these buildings will be. So.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions from commissioners? All right. Director Power, do we have any comments on Zoom? So we had a couple people watching this evening.
Let me make sure I'm getting all parts of the Zoom screen. No, I see no comments in Zoom. I guess anybody else in the participating here in person? Any other comments on the Ashley Crossroads rezoning request?
Right.
All right.
We have no comment from any more commissioners or from the public. Are we ready to take action on the recommendation for rezoning the Township Board?
Mr. Chair.
Sure, Jar.
At this time, I would move that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the Township Board of Trustees for the requested amendment to the zoning ordinance made by the applicant, Crossroads Distribution Center North LLC, to rezone the parcels between Ecorse Road and Van Born Road, west of Haggerty Road, as described under public hearing item number 1, having a total area of 29.07 acres, from the parcel's existing zoning to the zoning proposed under public hearing item number 1. Based on the analysis presented in the McKenna letter dated May 6, 2022, letters from staff dated May 5th, 2022, noting that the final condition in the McKenna letter is to be dismissed. And I believe that is my motion, sir.
Thank you. Do we have support for the motion?
I'll support.
Motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Cullen. Do you have any comments or discussion on the motion that's before us? No comments or discussion. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Medina Atchison,
Yes.
Sherry Budd,
Yes.
Jeff Jar,
Yes.
Brian Kelly.
Yes.
And the motion passes. You have your approval. It'll, I believe, next step, it'll go up to the Township Board for review. So thank you so much for coming in this evening. See you in a few weeks. Brings us up to number 2 on the agenda, case number 21040, DTE Substation Preliminary Site Plan Approval. By Township staff on this item.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'll defer most of my comments on this request to our planning consultant and township engineering consultant. This is a kind of a logical segue to a review you performed in March regarding some tree clearing that had to be done to facilitate soil remediation. And if you have seen the site, the tree clearing has occurred. It's pretty extensive because of the nature of where the power lines are and how much of the soil had to be remediated. But now the site is ready for consideration on the substation itself. It is a 120, 13.2 kilovolt, 80, I'm going to ask for the terminology, MVA, 9-circuit substation with some lightning masts, generators, and other required equipment to transform the power in that area. So it is a permitted use in the M1 zoning district. It is necessary for the growth in this area. With that as a backdrop, it requires full site plan review, so we are here tonight to go through the site plan review findings for the request. Again, the location is 42061 Ecorse Road, right there on the south side of Ecorse Road between Haggerty and Kirkridge Park Drive by the Kirkridge multifamily development there. So with that said, I'll turn this over to Ms. Krishnan for planning and zoning comments, and then to Mr. Kamer for engineering comments.
Thank you, Director Power. As you summarized, this request is for approval of a substation, which is labeled the Morton Substation, located on the south side of Ecorse, and the site has a total area of 2.14 acres. The site is zoned M1, and the proposed substation is permitted as a principal permitted use in the M1 district. Most of the information required for a basic site plan has been provided. We do need fire lanes designated throughout the site and clarification regarding emergency access to the satisfaction of the fire department. The legal description has been noted on the parcel. With regard to dimensional requirements, the proposed structures on the site, which is basically transformers, a hedge frame, power distribution center, and capacitor bank, they all do comply with the required setbacks for the M1 district. The plan includes elevations for the control center building, which is technically the only building per se which people can go in and out of. And it is 12.5 feet in height, and it also notes a 70-foot high lightning protection mast. Now, the height of the transformers, the hedge frame, the power distribution center, and the capacitor bank also needs to be noted. While technically this is considered as forms of mechanical equipment, there was Director Power and myself struggled with the definition of whether these would technically be considered as structures, because a structure is defined by the zoning ordinance as something that is permanently anchored to the ground. However, we made a distinction between what is a structure versus what is considered as mechanical equipment per se. So based upon our discussion, which I think Director Power will elaborate a little bit more after I have finished my review, these were technically not considered as structures itself. However, we did want to know how tall these structures are in order to get an idea of what the mass of the sum total of structures on the site is going to be. With regard to access and circulation, the applicant appeared before you 2 other times. One was for a rezoning from C1 to M1 and also during the tree removal permit. And they did explain that there is an extra wide curb cut designed into the site. And the reason for that is the initial equipment that they bring onto the site, which I believe is the hedge frame. It is such a big piece of equipment which is bought on such a big truck that they would like that truck to make a full turn into the site without having to back up on Ecorse Road. With the kind of weight load that equipment has, backing up onto Ecorse Road will end up ripping the road up completely, which was just finished by Ashley, who under Wayne County, and they won't be too happy about having the road all ripped up right after it's finished. So the drive has been designed. It is probably going to be used only at such time when the entire equipment has to be replaced, which in its lifetime, I don't know how long that is. However, it is extra wide, but it is needed at this time in order to get the equipment onto the site itself. The access drives through the site are all gravel. Typically, we require it to be concrete or asphalt. However, because of the electrical nature of the equipment on the site, in order to provide for proper grounding, the drives that are through the site, all of this is designated as gravel. All this is gravel all the time. This area is asphalt. The concern we had is for the applicant to point out to us at what point of time does the asphalt or concrete pad that enters into the site transition into gravel. So that demarcation line needs to be clearly made. There is no cross-access proposed or required. This is not a site where we want people to cut through. Sidewalks are not required on the inside of the site. Sidewalk is required along the frontage, and the applicant is going to be doing a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk along the site's Ecos Road frontage and building a bridge across the drain crossing. I believe that is the McClarty Drain, and they will be building a sidewalk, working with Wayne County to try and get that bridge across, so there will be sidewalk connectivity provided along that frontage. Parking and loading technically is not required for the site because it's not a site that will regularly have either employees or anyone, only maintenance personnel as and when required. With regard to landscaping, sites are always encouraged to provide more landscaping than is required. Within the summing of the landscape, the section that is referred to, this is a minor detail, however, the section of the ordinance that's being referred to is incorrect, so they just need to correct that and also correct a standard that is listed incorrectly. Frontage landscaping is being provided. Interior area landscaping is also being included. The ordinance also requires a 60-foot wide buffer with double staggered row of evergreens between the subject site and the abutting multiple family district to its west. Once again, the multiple family district is the 350-foot wide ITC corridor. We have the drain going there. I don't know if at that point it changes to the strong drain. I know it's the strong drain, sort of somewhere in there, McClarty, strong, one of those drains. So there is a lot of vegetation over there, and the applicant has, I believe, cut the trees that they got approval for, and they are keeping all of the remaining vegetation on the site, and that sort of meets the requirement and the intent of the ordinance. We would not want existing trees cleared out in order to plant smaller trees. As long as the existing vegetation is being maintained, that would be acceptable. Based upon a visual inspection, a significant, Director Power visited the site on May 6th, and he said a significant amount of tree cover from the site has been removed. It's just that when a site is wooded for as long as the site has been, when suddenly trees are taken out, the difference is pretty jarring. So a field verification is required from the applicant regarding the trees that are being preserved on the west and south property line as was previously approved. We want to make sure that all the trees that were supposed to be preserved were preserved. If for some reason any one or more of those trees that were to be preserved got taken out, they must be replaced per the ordinance standards. Once we receive no additional trees were removed than originally proposed, we will support a waiver for the greenbelt because the applicant is asking for a greenbelt waiver on the west and the south sides, saying the existing vegetation meets the requirements. But we do need to make sure that the existing vegetation is still there as was shown on the tree removal permit, and more trees were not taken out by an overzealous contractor. If so, the trees will have to be replaced before the waiver will be granted. The applicant is also proposing the installation of an 8-foot tall chain link fence along the east, west, and south side yards, an 8-foot tall decorative vinyl fence along the front yard, and also an 8-foot tall decorative metal fence south of the vinyl fence. It's a little confusing, but there is going to be a chain link fence around the entire property, which is shown in this. Then there is going to be a metal fence with spikes over here, and then there is also going to be a vinyl fence over here. So it's going to be a 2 fence. We did not want chain link to be seen from Ecos Road, so the decorative vinyl fence will block the fence that is behind it, and then the rest of it will be chain link fence. The decorative fence is proposed to include a spiked top for security reasons, and the chain link is proposed to have a V-shaped barbed wire topping. The ordinance does allow the Planning Commission to approve higher fences above 6 feet, going up to 8 feet with barbed wire if it meets security needs. The applicant had previously requested the same when they did the DD ASOC Center. So these are high energy and high electrical charge equipment, so keeping the public or anybody, whatever reason they might decide to climb up a fence, keeping them out of it is a good idea. So we would support that requirement. Tree removal permit was already approved. The stormwater detention calculations are subject to review and approval by Township Engineer and Wayne County. A photometric plan has been submitted and the site is illuminated with pole and wall-mounted fixtures. The fixture details meet ordinance standards. However, the illumination intensities that are shown on the photometric plan are a little bit higher than what we allow. So the plan does need to be revised. They just have to replace the type of LED fixtures they're proposing in order to comply. It's not like people are going to be on the site. The lighting is being provided purely for security reasons. For that reason, compliance with the ordinance standards for illumination is not out of the realm of reasonableness. So the illumination intensity needs to be adjusted and a new photometric plan submitted. The control center, as I mentioned, is the only building. It's 480 square feet. Building material colors are shown in the photos as basically it's a gray corrugated metal building. The neutral tone, it's not going to be visible with all the big equipment on that, but it's just a small industrial shed style building. There are no dumpster enclosures on the site and no trash is to be generated. Any work crew that visits the site for maintenance will haul their trash out as they leave. The sign proposed over here is a monument identification sign along Ecourse Road and multiple interior wildlife area signs. The smaller signs are exempt and the monument sign is subject to review and approval by our ordinance. The detail of the monument sign they provided has got something called as a concrete base reveal. I'm not sure what exactly that means because there's a monument and then there is a reveal and then the sign on top. So we just need to know what exactly it is and is the sign a box panel sign that is internally lit or not. So based on our review of the proposal, there are still some conditions that need to be met, plus engineering needs to be done. It is our recommendation that the Planning Commission grant preliminary site plan approval for the proposed substation to be located at 42061 Ecourse Road, subject to the 9 conditions that are listed in our review letter dated May 6th of 2022. I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Christian. Brings us up to Mr. Kammer.
Thank you, Chair. So we provided review for preliminary site plan review in our letter dated May 6th, 2022. This review was for the site plan dated February 2022, submitted to the township for preliminary site plan approval, as well as engineering feasibility for the proposed DT substation. One of the comments, first general comments, is when the applicant submits engineering plans, we want to see a list of required permits, the status of those permits, and the date of those permit approvals. At the time of this letter, the applicant had not received Wayne County approval at this time, although in talks with the applicant, we do know that they are having conversations with Wayne County. But the applicant has received approval for their Eagle Part 301, which is the Inland Lakes and Stream Permit, and the Eagle Part 303, which is the Wetlands Permit approval, which is listed on the plans. For water main service, there is no water main service on the site. There is also no sanitary sewer service on the site, so there'll be no improvements for either of those township-owned infrastructure items. The storm sewer, as Ms. Krishnan mentioned, the strong drain runs north and south along the west side of the property, and the existing site is undeveloped with no storm drain improvements. The applicant's plan is proposing to capture drainage from the site via graveled surfaces, perforated pipe, and underdrains routed throughout the system of pipes and manholes and connected into an underground pretreatment and storage system. The system is designed to store and discharge runoff at the allowable rates to satisfy both Wayne County and Van Buren Township. And the final outlet location is to the strong drain to the west. The plans note the limits of disturbance will be within the wetland extents, and that's noted on the drawings and is also taken in consideration as part of their Eagle permit. The first comment we have on the storm sewer is that the township will require Wayne County approval before moving this project to final site plan and engineering approval. And I write that as in requiring Wayne County approval. Many times we work with the applicant at least to know that the county has given them a thumbs up, more or less, that they've approved the design that they're going towards, and that they are in the understanding that if we do approve them for final site plan and the county makes changes, that the planning commission would then have to re-approve the site if anything was to happen. The next comment, as Ms. Krishnan mentioned, the driveway extension outside of the site is a rather large driveway extension, and the existing culvert that is there needs to be replaced as shown on their drawings, and end sections need to be added so that the transition from the driveway through the culvert are gradual and not exposed for erosion at that point. The only other mention with the stormwater system is that plastic pipe is indicated to be used as part of the drainage system as perforated pipe, which is typically not allowed in commercial or industrial properties. However, due to the nature of the site and due to the detention within the site utilizing stone subbase that requires perforation for conveyance into the underground storage system, it's recommended that it be permitted for this particular site. As far as paving and grading and the sidewalk is concerned, similar to the stormwater approval, the applicant must submit and obtain the right-of-way approval from Wayne County for the driveway cut, as well as the size of the driveway and the close proximity to the Ashley Capitol entrance to the east. That's the main concern that we had, and Fishbeck's main concern is whether or not the county will allow the close proximity of such driveways. But from our understanding with the system, it's a very infrequently visited site, and as Ms. Krishnan mentioned, there is the delivery of the materials and the structures at the beginning of the site is the big reason behind the large driveway connection there. The other mention is that the applicant has provided sample pedestrian bridge examples as to what is the plan for the provided pedestrian bridge over the strong drain. It appears to be a single span prefabricated pedestrian bridge that we've seen in many of the pathways within the metro region. In general, the example design seems to be in line with what we would see. However, a much more detailed engineering plan and design will be required before moving or approving engineering design, and it will need to be signed and sealed by a licensed professional engineer in the state of Michigan. Other than that, the span length, the height over the ordinary high water mark of the stream, and the offset from the road surface must be done in conjunction with Eagle and Wayne County requirements. Other than that, soil erosion and sediment control permit has been issued by Wayne County, and we look forward to seeing the final engineering plans from the applicant. So we are recommending that the Planning Commission grant the DTE Morton Substation preliminary site plan approval based on the engineering feasibility of the site and the current design presented in the above referenced plans. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has, and we'll leave it to back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Brings us up to comments or presentation from the applicant.
Through the chair?
Yes.
If I could just steal a little bit of time to go over, summarize a couple of things. One is I typically do some commentary on the fire marshal's report, and in this case there is not one, but I just want to give a reason for that. The fire marshal indicated to me that fires at facilities of this type are difficult to manage other than to work from a perspective of protecting the neighboring properties. Once a substation starts to catch on fire, hopefully that will never happen, but it's more about containing it and monitoring the perimeter. So that was his main comment on this report, and I will make sure he addresses the circulation and access comment in the event that the fire department can get there, early enough to catch a small fire. Just to connect that with one of Ms. Krishnen's comments. And then I'll just speak to follow up on Ms. Krishnen's comment about the interpretation of the height on the masts. It is kind of a complicated zoning issue. The masts themselves are not what we would consider buildings, which are subject to the schedule of regulations in section 4.102 of the zoning ordinance. They're not roofed structures, and they're also not conventional structures, as Ms. Krishnan said. So they are kind of standalone, essential service adjacent structures that would not be subject to the schedule of regulations in 4.102. It is something we looked at quite in depth in the zoning ordinance to verify that. And then the last comment related to the comments from our other reviewers, just with respect to the tree clearing, if looking at the details of the tree removal permit, there are quite a few unregulated trees that were cleared that were larger in the cottonwood family, and some of the trees that are more able to be cleared because they're not of high ecological value. And then the reason for a lot of the clearing, to my understanding, is the clearance from where some of the power lines have to go. But that being said, the area, as Ms. Krishnan said, on the west side of the site where the drain is located, has significant tree preservation, and there will be, the soil will not be moved around in the area to the south, in the southern portion of the site. So those are just some follow-up comments, and I think at this point it would be good to just let the applicant describe their request in a little bit more detail. So I'm happy to answer any other questions from a planning perspective if you have them. Thank you.
Director Bauer. All right.
Good evening, and thank you for having us here tonight. I'm Barbara Reichwalder. I'm Regional Manager out of DT's Corporate and Government Affairs Group, and I'm here with Chris Becker. He's Manager of our Engineering and Projects Group. Chris will go through our presentation and address the questions that you had. So at this point, I will turn it over to Chris.
Mr. Chairman, Committee, I just want to add a couple things. Just for specificity, in the letter, there were 4 specific sections for which the Planning Commission had to make specific approvals associated with the fences change. So just you'll see the sections and the call outs in the letters that I submitted. Those were intended to help support any motions and or crafting of the motions, so they're specifically addressed. I do want to point out some couple clarifications. The plastic fence that's in the front, it's actually by definition opaque fence per the ordinances, and it's actually in lieu of the required berm for the screening in the front. So it's just to be clear how that lines up with your ordinances. You guys require a berm or an opaque fence. So we call it decorative. Some places it's plastic, some places it's opaque. Yeah, we're not consistent with the words, but your ordinance requires an opaque fence, and that's the opaque fence. So that's specifics. The one thing is there is one item we specifically required approval with, as the consultant and Dan pointed out. We'll just have to work through some of the tree issues. We do have to, as part of the tree permit, if you remember, we call it an engineering speak. We had a planned tree removal, and then we're going to go back and do an inventory for an as-built, i.e. if there's any discrepancies, we might have left some of things, just so we can finish up what the final tree replacements are going to be at some park over on the lake, which I totally forget the name. I apologize. I will also be thing is that on the west side, we have not completed all tree removals, and I just want to point out that up on the front of the substation in the area where the bridge is, but a little bit south, in order to get the conduit across and under that drain of questionable name, depending on who it is. There are 2 bore pits that get dug. I want to say they're like 20 by 20 by 20 feet deep, and those allow us to do the jack and bore underneath that drain. On the tree permit, there's a couple of protected trees in that area that have not yet been cut. There are some other ones. Those are in the permit, and it would be in that front area. And then because that area, when they get done with that jack and bore on the west side of the drain, I'm just trying to keep my lefts and rights. I don't do that well. When they get done with that, we will have to plant trees for screening. But the trees that we remove as part of, and update as part of the as-built and the permit, those screening trees don't count, so those tree replacements occur at the park, okay? And that's all in the, you'll see that described in the tree take permit that was previously approved by the Planning Commission. I just wanted to point that out, just to tie the 2 permits together. The other thing is was to talk about the illumination, where the illumination of the substation is for security. If you look at the letter we call out, that's actually because we have to meet requirements of something called the National Electric Safety Code, and I emphasize the word safety. It's for safety working in there, so when the guys are working on illumination. If you looked at the light fixtures that are picked, we actually picked compliant lights where they sit at 20% when there's nobody in the station, and they ramp up to 80, or to full lights, it might be 30 or 80. We also have the ability to turn them off, and they are photosensitive to go on and off. But the primary reason for lighting inside the substation is for safety, and as part of when we work through the lists with the staff to go before final, we'll go through that stuff, just to make sure it's all clear. We have reviewed all the comments from the staff. We greatly appreciate their comments. We'll work with the staff to get those comments addressed before we come in on final. I did want to just circle back on one thing is, the stormwater management system, that is using something called that underground storm tech system. We've already used that and gone through at least one round of reviews at Nitro, which is in Northville Township. I can't remember the township. So Wayne County's already seen it. We took their comments and flipped it over. So we're working through with them to get the stuff taken care of. I will also point out, and I think you may have had a comment on it, there will be a change in the final site with respect to the easement for the drain. So if you look at the legal description of the property, there's no legal description of the drain. And the easements, the drain is kind of drawn on some lines. Wayne County because there is not a legally established easement for that drain, we will be adding that easement as they add it to the property through the work we're doing. Hopefully that made sense. Okay, we're just collecting up to make everything legally say where it is, because right now it's kind of gray. Okay, so that's all I had to do. Like I said, I want to thank the staff for their cooperation and their comments. We'll work through the resolutions as we go through with the county.
Thank you so much. Questions, comments from commissioners? Commissioner Jar.
I have a question for the applicant. Sorry. The gravel paving inside, is that also a safety issue with regard to this high voltage substation?
Yeah, so what happens is if anything was to become energized, okay? And so like say, and I'm just going to use a safety thing we talk about all the time to the public. If a live wire drops on the ground, okay, well that live wire is sitting at, let's say, 13,000 volts or 120,000 volts, or the 2 voltages we could have in there. Well, that, that's the voltage there, and the voltage dissipates as a function of distance, okay? And so, we always tell people stay 20 feet of line because that's a dissipation. Well, there can be trace faults and trace currents going within a substation. So the aggregate is such that we know its specific resistivity and it is uniform across the site. So when a guy was walking, the difference between his front leg and his back leg is not a significant enough potential that it causes the difference between his back leg and front leg is such that it doesn't cause a significant difference such that a current will go through his body, and we go into all these time element things to do that. So yes, that's how that's tied.
I
Okay.
thought that might be the case. Thank you for clarifying. I had another question regarding the height of the equipment. I know there's also, I believe I saw on the plans, there's a mast for bringing the power lines into the substation. How tall is that?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember, and I couldn't find we have an elevation print. So that's what ITC, they come in from the towers that you saw in the area. They're gonna come in and they're gonna drop down to what we call the H-frame. Literally, it's an H, because at the crossbar, which is at 35 feet, and then they sit up, they have lightning protection there. It makes up the integrated system. They're not overall as high as 70 feet, but I want to say they're like 57, 58. But the 70-foot structures are the two lightning masts, the one on each side of the transformer to protect all that equipment from lightning strikes. And all that is to, one, minimize our equipment goes, but also to make sure that for reliable electricity. So the H-frames are 57, 58 feet, but they're not as tall as the 70-foot lightning. The 70-foot lightning masts are the two tallest structures.
I have a question for our planning consultant, if I may. In your recommendation, you had made the condition that the planning commission should approve the fencing. I don't see that on the plans that I was given. I see some callouts in a letter for what the fencing might look like, but I don't see the actual, like a cut sheet for it. Is that something that we would have to approve for granting preliminary, or is that something that we could approve in a final?
The applicant did submit a manufacturer's cut sheet detail. It was in their response letter. There was a response letter from Mr. Becker, which had a series of explanations for each section. It did have a detail of the fence, but we will make sure before final approval, it comes back before you. We'll make sure all the cut sheet details are with you.
Thank you.
Okay, just a thing. In the letter, I called out, but over, of two streets. ITC used to have a warehouse. They sold it, and it's somebody else now. The exact fence we're putting in is that one at the corner of that intersection.
That's the opaque fencing. Is that the opaque fencing?
No, that is the decorative fence that with the spikes and the sliding gate that is immediately in the front yard of the substation that connects to the back.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Understood. Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, the bottom one is. And I gave the intersection, but I can't remember. You can see it on that Google thing where you look on the side around streets.
Questions, comments from any of the commissioners? Just had a question or a clarification from Ms. Christian. So do we, I know Commissioner Jar asked this, but do we need to put the specific language in there approving the fence tonight? Or is it, because you mentioned we could do it at final, so is that something we want to hold off when we get a little?
You can grant preliminary approval based on the analysis and recommendation in the May 6th letter. That would cover the gravel surface. It would cover the fence and the barbed wire and the fact that an as-built for the landscaping needs to be submitted along with that. And we'll make sure that all of that is shown on your final.
Thank you so much. Do you have any questions or comments from anybody in the audience? Director Power, do we have anybody on Zoom?
Do not.
All right. That brings us up to Planning Commission action. Are we ready to take action on this motion? Or take action on this agenda item with a motion?
Mr. Chair, this is a simple grant of a preliminary, right?
Yes.
Well, then I would be happy to move to grant the applicant, Christopher Becker, on behalf of DTE Electric, the preliminary site plan approval to construct a 120 to 13.2 kilovolt, 80 megavolt MVA, 9-circuit substation and related site improvements at the site located at 42061 Ecorse Road, based on the analysis and subject to the conditions detailed in the McKenna letter, May 6th, 2022, Fishbeck letter of May 6th, 2022, letter from staff dated May 5th, 2022.
Do we have support for the motion?
Support.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Atchison. Any comments or discussion on the pending motion? Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Brian Cullen,
Yes.
Medina Atchison. Yes. Sherry Budd,
Yes.
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes. And the motion passes. You are granted preliminary site plan approval. Thank you so much for coming in this evening. Have a great night.
Well, there's one more agenda item.
Applicant not here?
Item number 3 on the agenda, case number 19038, Camping World Preliminary and Final Site Plan Amendment Approval. Presentation by Township Staff Director Power. Do you have go over real quick with us?
Sure, I certainly do. And tonight, thank you, Planning Commission, for letting us bring this item before you. On this agenda, we have some assistance from the applicant presenting remotely tonight. They're going to be dialed in here. I think they're raising their hands. And let me see if that's indeed who is raising their hand right now, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna just bring them in to talk. And Mr. Booth is with the applicant as well, so let me put their hands down. And that should take care of, now they're involved in the meeting. That's great. Okay, so that works out. So let me first, before we have comments from the applicant, bring their plans up before you, just to show you some perspective of what has changed on this site. So for a little bit of historical context, the Planning Commission reviewed a preliminary site plan for this request in June of 2020. It involved the proposed demolition of a roughly 15,633 square foot east wing of an existing building that had 10 service bays to make room for expanded RV sales area. This proposal also involved some minor vehicle service as well as the RV sales, which both of those aspects of the request required a special land use. So the Planning Commission reviewed a special land use request in a public hearing in 2020, along with a request for the preliminary site plan for that proposal at that time. And the Township Board approved the special land use thereafter, and then the Planning Commission approved the final site plan in December of 2020. Now, the Planning Commission may recall that in January 2021, construction began on the site, and at one point in June 2021, there was a request for an amendment to that site plan that involved actually retaining that east wing of the building and altering their plan to accommodate leaving that wing of the building up. That plan was withdrawn formally by the applicant. So what you have before you tonight is an amendment to the original request now, which is kind of a version 3 of the proposal, which involves, for one, building off of the original approval of construction. There's kind of been a continuing thread of the construction activities. The east wing of the building was demolished pursuant to the approved site plan, and now the applicant is requesting an amendment to their plans to construct a 12,700 square foot addition to the west side of the building, which kind of mirrors the service uses that were there previously on the east wing, but the difference being that now the east side of the site is devoted to an expanded RV sales display area outdoors. So it's been a kind of a evolving project, but the formal task in front of the Planning Commission tonight is to consider approval of an amended preliminary and final site plan reflecting the change to add the 12,700 square feet to the west side of the building and to have the expanded sales area move forward. So That's kind of the framework of the request tonight. This still builds off of an amendment to the original approval, and it builds off of the special land use that was granted in 2020. To supplement the materials that you were provided in your packet last Friday, I did have some updated information that I sent recently, which included the submittal of a RV turning template drawing that showed the maneuvering of RVs, 30-foot RVs around the site, as well as because the application package I've put in this packet had the old application form, there's a newer application form that explains the nature of these proposed amendments. So that is also included in your current packet. One other item that may be helpful is a side-by-side drawing, just if you want to reference this to keep in mind the changes that were done on the project. There's an image near the back of your packet that includes a side-by-side view of the original approval as compared with the current approval. And if we can, I'll put that up on the screen. But without further commentary from me, I think it's important to hear from our reviewers on their review of the zoning and engineering aspects of this request, and then the applicant can go into greater detail on why they made these changes. So with that being said, why don't we go to the planner's comments?
Thank you, Director Power, for that detailed summary. As Director Power mentioned, this is the third amendment to the site plan. Simply put, they demolished the east side of the building, and now they're rebuilding a new wing on the west side of the building with pretty much the same use that used to be there in the east wing, with all the necessary site improvements. When they originally got approval from the Planning Commission in 2020, they did get conditional land use approval for outdoor vehicle sales and vehicle service minor. The addition to the site is not altering the conditional land use at all. Conditional land use strictly relates to the use only. It does not relate to the size of the use or the expansion or short. Whether it's 1,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet does not make a difference at all. It is the use that has been approved, so their conditional land use remains. They don't need new conditional land use approval at this time. We did, however, to ensure that the use is still within the scope and the framework of the conditional land use that was approved, asked the applicant to provide a detailed floor plan. The biggest concern that came was when we saw something labeled as a paint booth. Paint booth is considered as major vehicle repair, not as minor vehicle repair. So we actually had a meeting with the applicant just for clarification in that regard. And the two paint booths that are included in this new bay area are strictly for touch-ups. They do a lot of installation work. If somebody buys an RV or a tow unit, they go in there and upgrade it, put in the new fittings that people pick, and if the paint gets chipped, those paint booths are intended only to do a touch-up. It is not intended to do a full-scale repainting or a full-scale paint job, which would classify as major vehicle repair. The applicant provided that clarification multiple times, and we asked them to put it on their site plan too, to ensure that they stay within the scope of their conditional land use approval, and they've done it at this time. The lot area remains unchanged. The proposed addition does comply with all of the setback requirements and the building height. Access to the site has not been changed, although the addition is there on the west side of the building, as Director Power has put up. That is the original, that is the new one proposed. Emergency vehicle access plan around the whole building has been shown, and the fire marshal has reviewed it. Cross-access is not recommended for the site because it's a secure site. They have a fence around it. They keep these expensive vehicles locked. Having cross-access will not be feasible with the neighboring properties. The site has an existing sidewalk along its service drive frontage. It is labeled on the plans itself. Crosswalk connection, as was on the original approved plan. They have not changed any one of that. If you see, there is a crosswalk connection, goes across the entire island over there with a big paver connection to the main building's customer service entrance itself. So that has remained unchanged. The parking calculations on the site for regular and barrier-free parking spaces is in compliance with the ordinance standards, and all of them are correctly placed. The landscaping and screening for the site was extensively reviewed for the site. The landscape plan is pretty much the same. The only thing that has been removed is the area where the new addition is going to go in. The landscape islands were taken out from that area. So the trees that were in those islands has disappeared. Otherwise, that area is all of the other landscaping along the periphery of the site. Its frontage within the rest of the site remains the same. With regard to stormwater detention, it is subject to review by the township engineer, and Mr. Kamer will go over it. I'm not sure it would alter much because it was previously proposed as an impervious surface area, and the new structure is being located on the impervious surface area, so the total runoff possibly is not going to be any different. A photometric plan has been submitted, and the revised photometric plan complies. The fixtures also comply with the ordinance standards for being downward directed and shielded. The applicant has submitted elevations for all facades of the building. Now, the existing building is really old. Camping World has been in the township for a really long time now. It is constructed of concrete masonry units, which are to be patched, repaired, and painted. The previous approved elevations also included a blue color band on top of the facade that faces the service drive, going across the entire width of the building, and bollards next to the overhead door. Now, initially, the applicant is proposing an architecture consistent with the existing building. It is very difficult to retrofit an existing building with new materials. We understand that. However, just because an existing building is so far below our current architectural requirements, there is no reason why the new addition should also maintain that same low bar. You can tie it into the existing building by using some enhanced architectural materials on it. So the applicant revised the elevations based upon our recommendation, and they added stone veneer at the base of the proposed addition for a height of several feet in order to match the main entrance to Director Power. Is it possible to zoom into the proposed elevation so it shows up a little bit more clearly? It's on the bottom, really tiny. But they added stone veneer at the base of the proposed addition, and the remaining portion of the building is to be constructed of EFS. Now, EFS is typically, we don't have a limitation on EFS use in this district. We have it only for the Belleville Road corridor. It is typically used as an accent material. The applicant has stated that different finish textures are also available to augment the EFS further. I'm not sure what exactly the different EFS textures mean. Does it make the building look as different? So I'm hoping the applicant will answer that for you tonight by presenting a colored rendering of the building so you can see how the proposed addition still is of an improved quality but ties it into the existing building. The previous dumpster enclosure that was on the northeast side of the building has been eliminated, and there is a new dual dumpster on the west side of the proposed addition. It does meet the ordinance requirement. Fencing and signage continues to remain the same as was on the previously approved plan. The amended site plan adds significant square footage to the building, but does eliminate the amount of outdoor storage that was previously shown. Elements of the site relating to landscaping, fencing, all of those remain unchanged. I believe the applicant has been working on engineering issues for a while now. So it is our recommendation at this time that the Planning Commission grant amended preliminary and final site plan approval for the proposed Camping World addition and site improvements located at 43646 I-94 North Service Drive, subject to Planning Commission approval of the proposed building materials, colors, and finishes, and Wayne County and Township Engineer approval of stormwater detention and other engineering concerns. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Krishnan. Mr. Kammer.
Yes, thank you. As Ms. Krishnan mentioned, we've, over the back and forth of the site changing from the initial approval and construction, we have been working with the applicant as they've gone back and forth as to what is needed for each individual submittal that they've had. So I will try to kind of wrangle that all into what we're looking at now and explain exactly what's changed and what we recommend and what needs to be updated on their plans. So the Indented Plans include, obviously, the construction of the west side of the building. With this addition, they now will be adding a 6-inch fire suppression line to the building for the interior sprinkler systems. Due to the extension of the building to the west, They now have to add a new hydrant on the front side of the building due to the, what we call the hose lay length. Essentially, you've got to be able to cover the entire building with the length of a hose of about 250 feet. So a new hydrant has to be placed on the front of the building, and they will be replacing the existing sanitary lead that currently comes from the west side of the building through the proposed addition, so they will be replacing it as part of this project. But I'll hit each of those a little bit here. So for the water main service, the plans indicate a 3/4 inch copper service from the building to the proposed RV parking lot station, which is the dumping and refilling station there that was previously approved. They're adding the, as I mentioned, 6-inch fire suppression connection to the proposed building from the 12-inch water main line, or 12-inch Van Buren water main line that runs along the service drive. And then also the 8-inch public water main that connects to the hydrant that is in the island next to the filling station. For the sanitary, as I mentioned, they will remove and replace the existing 6-inch sanitary sewer lead from the existing building with a new proposed 6-inch sanitary lead that will tap into the existing sewer on the west side of the property. And the proposed sanitary lead from the RV dump station will be asked to be increased from a 4-inch to a 6-inch diameter sewer to meet township minimums for sanitary. The stormwater detention on the site, the site was constructed previously, and the stormwater detention is located in the southeast quadrant of the parking lot and has been fully installed and is currently operational. The changes to the site, the current path of the runoff essentially starts in that northwest quadrant where the new building addition is added and connects to the system that goes around the north side of the building. So the only changes are they're changing the location of a couple of catch basins and tying in some roof drains. But as Ms. Krishnan mentioned, the overall runoff from the site doesn't change. You get the same amount of runoff from a roof as you do from a parking lot. So the detention system itself is designed to meet the runoff of the site with the building or with the parking lot. So there's zero change, net change in the overall impervious area or runoff from the system. The only change is, as I mentioned, the location and length of some of the sewers on the site. Other than that, there were a couple of minor comments that we had on the engineering plans that will be checked and referenced prior to approving a final issued for construction set of plans. So other than that, we are recommending that the Planning Commission grant Camping World project engineering and final site plan approval, subject to the comments listed in our letter dated April 14th, and in accordance with the Township's Engineering Standards Manual. And the applicant will be required to address these comments in an issued for construction set of plans prior to, I guess, continuing construction out there. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you. Director Power, I believe we have a fire department letter as well, correct?
Thank you. And one of the most significant aspects of the change in plans here is, well, there is kind of a shifting around of where service bays were before as opposed to where they will be now. One of the benefits of this plan is that this will involve fire suppressing the entire addition. And so that was not, the building in existing form previously was not, it was only suppressed in a small portion of the building. This whole addition will be suppressed. So as Mr. Kamer mentioned, there will be fire suppression. So that took care of many of the fire marshal's original concerns with the project. He did note that there was some access clarifications that needed to be provided. There was a fire access plan sheet included in the plan set before you that showed that there would be adequate turning radii for the 48-foot long ladder truck. So his concerns on that point were addressed in the February 25th plan set. The turning radius into the east side gated area located on sheet 1A is not wide enough to accommodate the ladder truck. That was corrected in the 225 plan set as well. And then there is a comment about no parking fire lane signage being shown on the plans around the gated areas per one of his previous comments. The fire marshal also spoke about some previous concerns about water supply and fire flow. He mentioned that a flow test was performed and the water supply for the facility was found to be acceptable. And based on this current version of the plans dated February 25th, the site plan as submitted is approved. So those are the fire marshal's comments, and I'll just mention also, to give some historical perspective to this report, there's also some minutes from the previous reviews. The final site plan review in December of 2020, and the tentative review of the change that was proposed at June of 2021, which has been withdrawn. So just to give some overall perspective on the timeline. But with that being said, unless there are comments right now for staff, we can have the applicant give a description of their project.
Thank you, Director Power. I think we're ready to go with the comments and presentation by the applicant.
Okay, so Mr. Tulakangis and Ms. Nance and Mr. Booth, respectively, that would be the engineer, the design engineer, the owner's representative, and the architect for this project. I will have you all have the ability to share your screens. We have you up on our screen here, so Paul, if you'd like to start the discussion, or Melissa, or Mitch, whoever would like to go first. I think you actually can screen share right now. Let me know if you can't. And I am noting we don't hear anything right now, so let me make sure our sound is working. Maybe, and I apologize, Planning Commission, while I work on that, if there are any questions right now that you'd like to, or any comments you'd like to state for us staff or for Paul, Vidya, or I, feel free to ask those. I'll try to work on the sound issue while we go through that.
Anybody have any questions or comments on this agenda item? No? Anybody from the audience have any questions or comments? I think you're stuck for a second, Director Power.
Okay, that's okay. I think we're going somewhere now. So, Paul, if you'd like to speak, maybe you can give it another try.
Dan, I don't think the issue is with your speakers. Might be at their end selecting the right speaker for it to come through.
At first, it was this speaker, and maybe it is Paul's speaker. Melissa, could you try to speak?
Paul is speaking. Can anyone hear him? No.
Oh, okay.
Strange, we can't hear either one of the three.
Camera either.
Yeah, give us another minute here to try to troubleshoot this. Apologies, everybody. Let's see what we can do.
Could you turn on your camera? Maybe your audio and video are linked. Just
Let's
guessing.
try this. Paul, if you could try one more time.
Yeah, can you guys hear me? Test,
Yes.
test, test.
yes.
We can hear you.
Okay, all right. So it sounds like we're good. We're working now, Dan?
All good, yes.
Okay. Okay, well, first of all, I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Paul Tulakangas. I'm with Noack and Frous Engineers. And I wanted to apologize. I wanted to be there in person today. I had some childcare conflicts. And I'm really the only in-state representative on this project. So that's why there's no one here tonight. So apologies for that. Appreciate you guys' flexibility with linking us up with Zoom and everything. Melissa Nance is with Ford Real Estate Services. She's going to speak after I do a quick presentation and just kind of go over some of the background reasons for that this project's gone through multiple iterations. And then Mitch Booth is with Core States Architecture. He's based out of Minnesota, and he can answer any architectural or elevation related questions that may come up. So I think Vidya and Dan pretty much covered the major changes that this project has gone through over the past couple of years. Again, construction started on the original site plan approval, and basically, everything that's been installed is still usable in terms of utilities and pavements. So we're really focusing here on the addition on the west side of the building. It's approximately 12,700 square feet. And as Paul Kamer, discussed, there's no changes to the stormwater just because that's really kind of swapping pavement for roof in that location of the site. Overall Camping World, just as COVID caused some changes to the business model for RV sales and everything. And there were some changes at the Camping World administration on the administrative level as well that kind of fostered some of these intentions to change the scope of this project to incorporate this building addition. So with that, I'm going to kind of hand it over to Melissa. We can probably go into a little more detail on that. And again, once we all kind of present, we're welcome to hear any questions that anyone may have.
And through the chair, Melissa, before you speak, what I'd like to do is I'll just share the screen that we have with the site plan so you can know we're all looking at the same thing here. Unless you feel free to take the screen away from me if you have something else to put up, but I'll put our site plan up on the screen now. Okay.
Thank you, Dan. My name is Melissa Nance. I am a partner in a firm called Forward Real Estate Services and have worked on Camping World's new greenfield locations nationally, developing them, as well as major expansions for the last couple of years. However, before that, I spent almost 7 years in-house with Camping World as their Director of Real Estate Development and Construction. So I am well-versed in Camping World's operations as well as their real estate. I want to thank the commissioners for having us this evening and giving us an opportunity to present the amended site plan, and also offer my apologies for not attending in person. I currently hail from Arkansas, and it is not easy to get anywhere. Camping World, we do not have anyone locally that has been involved in this project, simply because Camping World is obviously a large national retailer, and any new developments or major expansions are coordinated and directed out of the corporate office, which is in a suburb outside of Chicago. So apologies for not having local representation. Camping World currently has over 185 locations in 42 states across the country. As was previously noted, they've had a very long and happy history in the community. Of those 185 locations, this facility is one of only a handful that did not have the full complement of Camping World's sales and services. Previously, this was strictly a retail store along with a service, as was previously noted. Camping World's primary business undertaking is RV sales, with service as a support of RV sales. And then the retail offering is also in support of the RV sales operations. So that's why that's why we went in for the modification to the land use previously and have changed direction, as Paul noted, during the course of COVID. It really had a huge impact, I think, on everybody's business, and had to kind of rethink and contemplate, what things look like for the future. I think everybody is aware of the fact that, nobody could travel during COVID, and as a result, RV sales increased exponentially in the course of the last couple of years. While that has moderated a little bit, Camping World is still seeing very elevated demand, and they're not seeing that it falls or decreases drastically in the future. And what we have discovered is that obviously when we're selling more RVs, we also need additional, we're service capacity in order to support the sales of RVs. When we talk about service, I just want to be clear here. Those service bays, there's a variety of activities that actually occur inside of them. First and foremost, Camping World disproportionately sells, and this is part of their business model, what are called towable units. So you have two different kinds of units. You have towables and you have motorized. Your motorized are your motorhomes, and obviously have motors. Towables are towed behind your SUV or your truck. And Camping World, during the Great Recession in 2008, they made a concerted effort. It was a strategic business shift to move from selling, selling less of the motorized and focus more on the towable, on the towable market. That was also, part of the changing customer sentiment and demand for lower price units and models. So when we're talking about service, Camping World doesn't do any heavy engine work. They don't do any chassis work. That is all outsourced and not done in our facilities. Our techs are really, these are small homes on wheels. Our service techs are really handymen. They're carpenters. They're doing floors. They're working on appliances. They're doing, water leak repairs to the roofs. They're installing, furniture. They're doing electrical and plumbing work. And so when we talk about the service bays, we have the service bays are really needed and intended to support vehicle sales. So you're going to have a couple of those bays that are used for pre-delivery inspections to customers. Then you have a couple more bays that are used for warranty work. When these units are delivered from the manufacturers, we have to go through them and correct any sort of defects with the manufacturers before they're really ready for sale. So you have another couple bays that are used for warranty work. And then we have other bays that are used for parts and accessory install. You can imagine when you're buying these units, and then we have our retail offering inside. We're installing hitches, we're installing satellite dishes, we're installing levelers. Sometimes we're swapping out furniture, but everything that we need to do in order to get the customer on the road. So that happens in other bays. And then you've got bays that are designated or utilized for traditional kind of service work that I just detailed. And just one point of clarification, there is only one paint booth that will be in this facility. I think it was noted that there were two. That paint booth will take up two of the service bays. Just, you can think of it as a large steel self-enclosed metal box with doors at the end.
Well, what I'm going to do is try to make that stop.
Looks like a power button to me.
Video.
Wow.
My experience in the car business and service, when you have a box like that, that's a full-fledged painting facility.
Well, I'm not sure how to even.
We
Somebody shut her off.
You have to hold the power button for
actually
like 15 seconds.
had a sit-down
Matt.
meeting with them. Because
Never a
I
good sign when you got an angry
Listen.
face looking at you on the.
And they said,
Wow. Well, what I'll do while we try to restart that, I'll call the engineer who may be able to merge a call with owner, so I'm sorry about that.
Uh, If I'm wrong, Director Power, when we had the meeting with Camping World and I raised the same question about the number of service bays and the fact that there was a paint booth, I was told repeatedly that it's only touch-up. Was Ms. Vance also there, Nance also there in that meeting?
Yes.
She was. They reiterated it, which is why I said you are not going to do full body painting. And she reiterated, but I completely understand where you're coming from.
Metal box is for, to keep the paint like still, so that it's applied to the vehicle or the camper.
She said touch-ups. I would use a brush.
Mr. Tulikangas, our computer
In a little
crashed,
container with
so
its own
we are
brush.
having to vacate the Zoom, unfortunately. But can you merge a call with Ms. Nance, and we'll try to keep the conversation going?
Yep, let me try that right now. Hey, Melissa, can you hear me on the webinar still? Yeah, we can hear you, Paul. Okay, hey guys, I'm just gonna try putting you on. Can you hear Dan when he speaks?
Testing. Okay.
Okay. Dan, can you hear them speaking?
I can, but just I might recommend making sure you don't have another audio feedback. Maybe mute your computer screen, because we'll be talking to you through the phone now, so there won't be any feedback.
How about, is this better?
Everything sounds good, yes.
Okay, so Melissa, I think you can just go ahead and keep your presentation going there. Okay, we still got Melissa.
So you might need to dial in, Melissa, if you don't have her on the
Let me
phone.
try. I got her phone number handy here.
I have a question, Ms. Krishna, while we're waiting. So you mentioned we have not seen colors, finishes, things like that.
Yes, I'm not sure how we are going to see it through
Through the telephone?
That was the first thing mine, even through Zoom, when they could not open their video feed, I'm like, how is the Planning Commission going to grant preliminary and final without seeing what this building looks like?
Okay, Melissa, can you hear Dan and vice versa?
Yes, they have to come back.
Testing.
Dan?
Yep. Hello, we can hear you.
Okay, fantastic.
Yep.
Apologies for that. Where did, Dan, I'm sorry, what was the last thing that you guys heard?
So
Discussing I guess the paint booth. I'm trying to remember exactly what happened when the sound went haywire.
Can you hear me, Melissa?
I can, yes.
Okay, you were describing that the paint booth is merely for touch-ups and the fact that most of your service technicians are actually carpenters or handymen. The Planning Commission does continue to have the same concerns we had originally aired regarding the setup of these paint booths. I had accidentally mentioned that there were 2 paint booths, and you corrected me that it's 1 paint booth occupying 2 bays. Are these completely enclosed bays? Is there, say, a metal chamber in which the unit is put and sprayed, or is it somebody with the spray can in the hand? Pardon me if I'm totally off in my description. I've not seen cars being painted unless it's on a large-scale factory floor. So if you would explain it a little bit, the Planning Commission would benefit from it.
Yes, the paint booth is a completely self-enclosed piece of equipment. It is manufactured by a group out of Wisconsin called Global Finishing Solutions. It is a self-enclosed steel box is really what it looks like, with large doors at the end that the unit is driven into, and then it's got all the appropriate exhaust and filtration systems that are required by local and federal law, and the technician would be fully enclosed inside of that piece of equipment when they're doing their work. Did that answer the question?
Go ahead, please, with the rest of your presentation. The Planning Commission is listening.
Certainly. I just wanted to make sure that you guys understood how the service bays functioned, and why there was the adjustment to the site plan in order to move the service bays to the west side of the facility rather than to the east side.
Can she repeat again how much actual painting they're going to do and why they have to have a closed box?
Could you hear that, Ms. Nance? What, how?
Yes, I can, Dan.
Okay.
It's hard for me to quantify it, but just because it's demand, right? But it's to address, minor cosmetic damage that happens during delivery. It's to correct minor cosmetic damage for our customers if they are on the road and they scrape a sign or a tree. But it is fully enclosed because from an environmental and regulatory standpoint, it's a much safer way to proceed than just having curtains. So Camping World goes to considerable expense to acquire these pieces of equipment to make sure that our techs are doing things the right way and the safe way. These pieces of equipment are approximately $250,000. They are manufactured in Wisconsin, and then they have specific installers around the country that this is all they do. They bring in these booths and they install them, and it is fully self-enclosed, and the units will be driven inside, and then that paint booth will be closed for any and all work to be done inside that self-enclosed piece of equipment.
So Director Power, so the unit that they're driving in is big enough to pull a full trailer with all the equipment and an employee in there. Yeah, like 30-foot, 40-foot box for doing touch-ups.
Yes, it's basically double, it's the full length of that inside of the store, the service wing.
Okay, so I think we all have kind of concerns on how we can make sure it's not doing full vehicle painting and repairs in there versus correcting a dinged bumper or a scratch.
Yeah, could you hear the concern from the planning commissioners regarding the scope of the repairs?
These are not like cars, right? The expense to paint a full vehicle is exorbitant. It is more cost effective for somebody to simply acquire a new RV. People tend to trade out their units every couple of years. So if there's major damage to a unit, it's typically written off by insurance and simply replaced. So it's self-enclosed really for safety and for environmental regulatory purposes. But you would replace a unit before you would repaint an entire unit. They may be correcting scratches on a bumper, scratches on the side from a sign or from a tree, but to repaint the entire side of a unit is just not cost effective, or an entire unit is not cost effective.
Ms. Krishnan?
Yes.
What, do we have a limit that details the difference or size or anything of the difference between where it changes from a minor repair into a major? Or is there a...
Painting is considered specifically in our ordinance as a major vehicle repair. It is classified, paint booths are, which is why when this addition was initially proposed, we asked applicant repeatedly for clarification, what exactly does the paint booth do? So the applicant, this entire new addition of 12,000 square feet is going to have only repair bays. So what they said is the paint booth is only one small unit. It's just going to be one which is going to be finishing and retouching, doing just touch-ups on vehicles. It is not going to be similar to an automotive assembly line or spray painting of mass scale. That was their explanation, which they qualified as being minor vehicle repair. But the Planning Commission, you would still like to, it sounds like you would still like to see actually what this paint spray booth unit looks like. And the concern is, Melissa, Paul, the concern the Planning Commission is having is, what does this paint spray booth look like? they just want to be careful in not crossing the line between light industrial, which is minor vehicle repair, versus major vehicle repair. They want to ensure that the proposed amendment does not violate the original conditional land use approval that was granted to you. So is any information possible on what exactly this paint booth looks like? And you mentioned that the cost of repainting a camper or even a side of a camper would be cost prohibitive. Somebody would just buy a new unit. We have no idea how much it costs to paint a new unit versus just one side. So some kind of idea of what it costs. Does it cost 1,000, 5,000, 10,000? That would also help the Planning Commission understand the scope of the use. If it's, when you say touch up, adding paint touch up, is that on a customer's bill going to be $2,000, or is it going to be like 10,000 or 15,000? We do have planning commissioners who are familiar with the automotive industry, considering we are in the Detroit metro area. So they do understand how the automotive industry or vehicles, vehicle repair and refinishing works. So I think they just want to ensure that their concerns are adequately addressed.
Sure, I understand that. RVs are really a little bit different than the automobile industry. These things are not made on you know, factory lines. They are really constructed individually, and most of them are constructed and manufactured in Elkhart, Indiana. But it's hard for me to quantify that for you from a cost perspective, simply because these units wildly vary in size and price. We've got units that are under $20,000, and then you've got your larger heavy metal diesel pushers, which Camping World sells very, very few of, as I noted early on, that are several $100,000. So doing a bumper on a $300,000 unit obviously is going to be, from a cost perspective, you're talking about a bumper there versus a bumper on a $30,000 unit. It's hard to quantify that.
Excuse me,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Jar.
I have a couple of questions. The first is, I'm sorry, I think we broke into a discussion mode. I wasn't clear that the applicant was done giving the presentation. And I want to be sure that I hear the full presentation from the applicant before perhaps my questions will be answered if I hear the full application, the full presentation from the applicant. If, on the other hand, the applicant is done with the presentation, I do have some questions that I'd like to pose.
Okay. Director Power, if
Look, I think that's a good suggestion, Commissioner Jar. And for the applicant's sake, just to keep the communication channels clear here, I do have you on this call. I am also pulling back up our screen showing the floor plan for the site. And I do have the Zoom room open, but I would prefer that you just try to speak to us through the phone, because we know that's not going to cause audio issues for the time being. But yes, I would like you to proceed with the rest of your discussion. And that said, I have an image in mind to kind of zero in on this paint booth when we get back to that part of the discussion. So, but that being said, why don't you go ahead and proceed with any other comments you have, Ms. Nance?
Again, I think I had fairly well gotten through my presentation. I wanted to talk about the changes, the evolution of the course of this project, why things happened, because I knew it was a topic of concern, kind of the activities that would be happening in the service bays, and obviously Camping World's desire to bring the full complement of their products and services and offerings to this location, and be able to keep it open, since it is only one of a handful of their locations across the country that does not have RV sales. So I am complete and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you so much. Commissioner Jar, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Thank you. I do, for the applicant. Would it be correct to say that the painting being done in the repair booth, there is no custom painting of a freshly sold unit? There's no custom painting. All of the painting work is strictly related to collisions? The painting then is strictly related to collision repair.
Yes, cosmetic damage during delivery or, just defects from the manufacturer, or as I noted, bumpers or scratches, that kind of work. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Through the chair, I would like to ask for an example so that we can quantify a minor repair to a more expensive unit and a minor repair, like an example of one, quantifying it by how much it costs for each unit, whether it's a $200,000 unit or a $20,000 unit. Can you give us an example of what a minor repair could be and would be?
I can certainly follow up with our service and collision folks and get that back to you after this call. But it's hard for me to quantify that off the top of my head. Camping World sells hundreds of different models all across the country, and so that is going to vary wildly depending on what unit is being offered for sale and what it is constructed of.
Commissioner Jar.
Mr. Chair, right at this time, looking at the applicant's request, I have a concern that there's a disconnect between our ordinance definition between minor repair work and major repair work. Major repair work, I believe, has a definition that includes, I believe minor repair work has a definition that excludes collision repair. Minor bumping, I think, is the term, of bumpers, that sort of collision damage, which if the applicant is trying to do minor repair, that sounds to me on the surface that it may not be in line with what our ordinance would allow them to do given their minor repair special use permission. That is probably a technicality that could be resolved through some efforts with staff and the applicant. I would also say at this time that I don't have a clear view of the color scheme of the building, and we, as a condition for moving forward with granting this request, we would have to see the materials sample. I would suggest that at this time, we don't have the information that we need to go forward with an affirmative or a denial for this. And I would like to discuss the possibility of, I appreciate that the applicant came here. I know how difficult it is to come to these meetings, but I think at this time it might be prudent, given our technical difficulties and the information that we are missing, to reschedule the remainder of this for a different date, if the commission agrees.
I agree with that through the chair.
Would that be tabling it then? Or postpone?
Postpone it, I believe.
I think we're all in agreement. We need to see color schemes. We need to see what work's actually going to be done there, clarify how it would match with the prior approval. I think maybe we get a list over to Director Power and we can kind of run through some of our concerns. Would we need to do in a motion to table Director Power, or would it be something we can just adjourn to the next?
You would need a motion to table with specific tabling conditions. I might ask just a couple of follow-up questions, if I may, through the chair, to the applicant. One is, Mr. Booth, as your architect, do you have color renderings available tonight? And this may be a function of the technical issues we're having, and there may be any, because of the other condition, we will need to come back anyway, so it may just be resolved at that time. But I'm not sure at this point if there is a color rendering that was going to be shown. But it would be good to have that in advance. But another thing for maybe Ms. Nance to clarify is a question of the historic or the previous uses at the site. Were there collision repair activities previously in the building? just for clarifying what we're basing our review off of.
Other than the work that's being done to support the addition of RV sales, which are your pre-delivery inspections and your warranty work, it's the same use as it was previously. They obviously didn't have a paint booth, but Camping World is just, it's the same use as what they've previously done. The paint booths are a newer addition, obviously, just to make sure that we're complying with all of the local and federal guidelines. So Camping World's making the investments in those equipments on all of the facilities that we're doing new or we're doing expansions at.
Melissa, if I may just ask a question. The reason why we are getting concerned in the distinction between minor and major is minor vehicle repair technically includes oil changes, vehicle cleaning, preparation for sales, and anything that is retrofitting, if people pick new finishes of flooring and stuff. I'm not sure I was aware that there'll be collision repair done over here. Collision repair as in, to what extent collision repair? Is it collision repair if the RV units are being delivered to your site and get dinked while being stored in there? Or I think that is where the distinction, there is a little bit of a concern, because minor vehicle repair limits are very clear. We approve it as part of minor vehicle repair is included when you review an O'Reilly's or an advanced auto zone where they just replace battery or change your windshield wipers or just do an oil change. Anything that goes into the realm of collision repair becomes major vehicle repair. So that's where the distinction we are trying to make. If we could get an itemized list of the scope of every single type of vehicle repair that is proposed for this site, that will help the Planning Commission.
And Ms. Krishnan and Planning Commissioners, could I add to that by asking if you think it would be helpful to have a itemized list of what types of repair activities occurred in the pre-existing footprint prior to the start of construction, to give some perspective of the extent to which there is a continuation of anything beyond minor repair versus an expansion of things that go beyond minor repair, because that may be an important distinction. With there are certain thresholds for continuing and or expanding a non-conforming use that may be part of the equation, but we don't have enough information at this time to know. So I think at the direction of the Planning Commission, I'd like that to be part of the kind of inventory you consider.
I think that'd be a great idea. I'd like to see the list. So what I've gotten noted so far is work and scope of work that they're going to be performing with all the items they're planning on doing. I have their prior work that was performed at the facility. I have information regarding the paint booth and size, dimensions, things along those lines. What kind of collision repairs and the work performed, as well as the color renderings building materials, colors, and finishes. Are there any other items that I missed on our list or that we?
I don't think so.
The only thing I want to possibly add is that I want to know what they did prior to this request in regards in their paint booth, because I believe I heard that they did have a paint booth before.
I thought you said they did not.
They did not.
Not, okay, and okay, I'm sorry, I heard that wrong.
Yeah, that's okay.
I would point out that in my memory, and I could be wrong, I believe Camping World used to advertise the west side of the building as specifically a collision repair center, a collision center. That section of building is no longer there. That section was removed. And that may have an impact on what was previously performed on site. It may or it may not, and that is why I wanted to suggest that maybe we don't have enough information at this time to really make a decision one way or the other, and I would hate to make the wrong decision for the applicant.
Absolutely.
Given that sounds like we are in agreement, unless anyone has any other comments.
I have one other question. It's not related to that, but it's probably not too smart. Paul, you said something about that the parking lot revisions were going to be minor. But everything west of that building now where they stored trailer is all stone. And there was a fire hydrant down by the road. It was why they didn't put a driveway through there, because they didn't have that fire hydrant protected. Now, so that fire hydrant will stay there, but I assume when they get done building, then they will pave all of that, correct?
Yes, so to clarify that statement from me is the changes that I speak on as minor is relative to what was already previously approved. So the previously approved plans had that entire west side paved. So the only changes to the pavement is the removal of the pavement to fit in the existing building.
Right, but
So-
they never paved any of that west side.
From what I understand and from our inspection on the site was they stopped when, this was last summer, when there were talks of the east side building remaining and then the west side building. When they were kind of juggling the idea, they paused essentially any work on site until all of this was figured out.
Okay.
So yes, the plan is to, regardless of what if they were to do nothing or this plan was not to be accepted, they would still have to pave the west side of the parking lot per the Planning Commission's approval of the original site plan.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. One thing I'd just like to mention that, kind of following with what you said, Commissioner Jar, was if they were doing previous collision work and they didn't have a paint booth, and now all of a sudden we're adding a paint booth on site, that is going to start raising some concerns I have on expanding uses and what is taking place at the facility. So getting some additional information on that would be very useful for me.
Do they take trade-ins of vehicles there? If I had an RV and I traded it in and it kind of was beat up, where would they take that to repair it to sell it used?
I'm not sure, Ms. Nance, if you are still with us, if you could hear that question regarding trade-ins.
We sell new and used RVs at all of our locations. So if we take in a unit on trade, there's no guarantee. I mean, Camping World operates 185 locations across the country. They may move it to another location because their inventory team that sits in Chicago determines that it's best suited to be sold at another location. But it may stay there and have, minor repairs. They may replace furniture. They may replace flooring. They get it ready and resell it. So some of them, I'm sure would be minor repairs would be done and it'd be resold there. And other times those units would be moved to other locations and sold at one of their other networks of dealerships.
Great, thank you so much. I think we kind of have an idea of what we want to do this evening. Is anybody ready to make a motion? Then we can look at closing and moving on to the next agenda item.
Mr. Chair, at this time, I would make a motion that we table discussion of item 2, Camping World Final Site Plan. I'm sorry. Item 3, excuse me. I make a motion that we table item 3, case 19038, Camping World Preliminary and Final Site Plan Amendment Approval until such time as we can have an opportunity to review the scope of work and how it relates to the township's definition of major repair versus minor repair, and until such time as we can see the color rendering of the facade, the front of the building, and noting the other concerns that were brought up tonight during this discussion. I hope that is sufficient.
Do I have support for the motion?
Support.
I got a motion by Commissioner Jar, support by Commissioner Cullen. Do you have any comments or questions from commissioners? The only thing I would clarify was I think we had work scope, the paint booth information, color renderings, and facade collision repairs with the definitions of what they were doing before and doing now, and what they're intending on doing going forward. And that was the additional items I had on there.
Yes, sir.
All right, so we have a motion and support. Do I have a roll call vote, please?
Sherry Budd,
Yes.
Medina Atchison,
Yes.
Brian Cullen,
Yes.
Jeff Char,
Yes.
Brian Kelly.
Yes. All right, and motion to table the agenda item has been approved. Director Power, do we have an idea, or if we could ask the applicant on how long they think it would take to get some of these items for us?
Sure, we could ask the applicant, and then we of course have to factor in the
Yeah,
time we need as staff to review. But does the applicant think that's information that you could provide fairly quickly?
Dan, I could only hear part of it. So if you wouldn't mind, I'm sure, we would make every effort to turn things around as quickly as we possibly can. Obviously, it's a priority for Camping World to get construction complete this year so that they can reopen and rehire our employees and start generating taxes as soon as possible early next year. So we'll turn everything as quickly as we can if you provide us with a list.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you for working through some of our technical difficulties that we ran into.
All right. We'll be in touch soon. Thank you. Take care.
Brings us up to general discussion. Director Power, do you have anything you'd like to go over this evening in general discussion?
Just a couple of reminders. There will be a public hearing on May 25th for the Sumter Road Corridor draft plan. The related Sumter Road mixed-use zoning district zoning amendments are in progress. I want to make sure we get everything correct and that we, I and our consultants adequately address the comments that were stated 2 meetings ago on that, and I realize we have not given you any updates yet, but that's all a work in progress. We'll get those when we can, and we want to make sure we have agenda space to adequately go through those. So there's a public hearing on the Sumter Road Corridor Plan. That may simply be a public hearing, and that may not be yet the time that you recommend the adoption of the plan, or it may be depending on what else is on the agenda and how you feel about the plan. And there's going to be one rezoning request for the parcel that you heard about tonight, which is the leftover Haggerty Road parcel now owned by Ashley Crossroads Distribution North. So there's at least a couple things we know are on that agenda, and I can see there being a couple things on the next few agendas. So I appreciate all your devotion, and we'll keep moving forward.
Thank you so much, Director Power. Anything from any of the commissioners or consultant?
Quick update on the gasoline station amendment. I think we talked about maybe removing the EV clause from it, but I felt it's maybe pretty close.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Jar. We have a barrage of site plans, so that kind of got pushed to the side.
That time of year.
It's that time of the year. We just have so many big site plans coming, so we temporarily pushed it to the side, but yes, we will bring that back before you as soon as we can.
Thank you.
My other suggestion was, maybe we need to talk about, do we want to let developers come online and do Zoom meetings rather than before? If they weren't here, we wouldn't address it. I understand, according to everything else, we have to still have that for the audience. But I don't know if that should be extended to developers who are expecting us to do something, and we would have, maybe could have not had this happen tonight, maybe.
Certainly worth starting with the messaging and reminding developers that they really should be attending in person. So that's an effort that ramped up today, and closer to the meeting time, I tried to get somebody here in person. With this site, it sounds like there's still a lot of decision makers that are pretty far away, but it is, I think, really helpful to have somebody representing the project in person when we're all back in person. So good suggestion. That was a muddled answer, but officially we all have to be here, as you know.
Yeah.
The public can participate remotely. The applicants kind of fall in a gray area, but we will definitely try to get them invited earlier than later and get them committing to having somebody present.
And Director Power, I understand with this evening where there was a problem with the emergency with childcare, things along those
Sure.
lines, but you run into that issue where we have one of our big items to look at is reviewing color renderings and looking at facades.
Details.
Yep, and so that makes it extremely difficult to do by video when we're supposed to tell what a texture is and whether the hue on the TV is a little different than, so, I don't know how to kind of address those, but that might be a way to kind of lean on them a little bit of, we can't really make decisions when we don't have it here to look at it.
Absolutely. Good suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Power.
Thanks for your patience, too.
Oh, yeah.
So do we have any other comments before we, a motion to adjourn? Or motion to adjourn? Motion, Commissioner Atchison. Support?
Support.
Commissioner Code, support. All in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion to adjourn is granted.
Vidya, I have a comment. Okay? I couldn't say it earlier. But can you tell me, how did they paint before the renovation without a paint booth? But they were doing the same painting, right?
Sorry.
I feel like I'm missing something. What?
That's where they have it paved, right?
Right.
So when
Just the one, yeah.
when
ran
applicant
into
goes to construction, the township collects bonds